Well, Valentine's is in a few days. Let's talk about love. A special type of love. The love between a man and his pickaxe. You got it. We're talking about the 1981 Canadian slasher film My Bloody Valentine. Oh boy, my first horror film on this channel, and it's a slasher from the 80s. Not a bad start if I say so myself. Even though My Bloody Valentine isn't well known as Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, I do know that this film has developed a cult following of sorts over the years, but I think it still needs a little bit more attention. And plus, I felt covering a holiday horror mascot from the likes of Leprechaun or Krampus seemed fitting for me for some reason. But my introduction wasn't to this film. It was to the 2009 remake, the 3D one. Ugh. I didn't watch the OG film until much later. I have a feeling that's the case for a lot of people when it comes to this film, which kind of deters them from watching the original due to the remake being a 3D cash grab that nobody really wants to talk about. So instead, I'll talk about the remake later on. Let's just talk about the 81 film instead. The story is 20 years before the time the movie takes place. In the fictional town of Valentine's Bluff, careless supervisors abandon their posts to attend the town's annual holiday dance. While tragedy claimed the lives of 5 minors, the sole survivor, Harry Warden, was institutionalized but returned for vengeful massacre on the disaster's first anniversary. Harry was then found and put back in his cage where he stayed for 19 years, until the town starts gearing up for another Valentine's Day party, where a heart-shaped package with a bloody message and an actual heart it lands on the doorstep. Now, off the bat, nothing seems much different here from other slashers of the time. A psychotic slasher returning for vengeance, Friday the 13th hit theaters the year prior. Holiday slashers were also very common, with Silent Night, Bloody Night in 1972, Black Christmas in 1974, and of course, the big boy himself, Halloween, hitting in 1978. So, what did this one do differently? Well, one answer: it's Canadian.
What exactly does Canada want?
We want more money. Yeah, more money.
More money from where?
Just more money, you know. Canada doesn't get enough money. Other
I know this is commonplace with a lot of horror films these days, with X and Pearl being most recent, but I felt this film added a solid slasher to the lineup next to Jason, Michael, and Freddy. The only difference, he wasn't sequel to death like those other films. For a good reason, though. It cost $2 million to make this movie, and it made better than $5 million back worldwide. Not exactly deep pockets on this one, so Paramount shelved it, considering it not worth expanding on, leaving it for interpretation later on down the road. It's kind of a shame though. This movie had some decent ideas and merits to it. Watching this is like peering into a time capsule from the 80s. From the cars to the fashion to this guy, my favorite character in the entire film. He drives a Volkswagen Super Beetle and has a sick mustache. Plus, he gets nailed at the end of the film. This film was also shot on site in Nova Scotia and has shoots in an abandoned mine nearby, making the whole film feel dirty. Not that kind of dirty. Get your mind out of the gutter. Don't get me wrong, there's some skin in here, not to the degree that some people will be expecting, though. So, a lot of others will probably be saying, what about the kills? It's got decent kills, right? Yeah, there's actually some pretty damn decent ones in here, considering Tom Savini wasn't the guy working on the special effects like Friday the 13th. Sadly, however, the version we got here in the US was chopped up by the MPA, so most of the gore was cut out, which is sad because it has a gory finale, and without actually seeing the intact scene, it doesn't make sense. It just seems like a edited mess. Depending on which copy is streaming, it can make or break your experience. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, y'all. Shout Factory has released a Blu-ray which restores all the gore. So anybody interested, go check it out. All that's left is the characters. Oh boy, I've been putting this one off for a bit.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
Y'all remember me mentioned that this is my favorite character? That's because the main three the movie is centered around, they're complete assholes. A love triangle that shouldn't be, that gets resolved kind of sort of by the end of the film. I won't go in depth about it. And Everyone else in the film is your typical slasher trope. You know, the funny guy who's a chicken shit, the tramp, the final girl, the old guy who issues warnings and then gets killed halfway through the film. Pretty par for the course. However, there is one trope in this film that does get used to its advantage. It's the split up trope. When some characters leave, the killer will magically show up and strike again, really giving it a whodunit vibe. But the biggest gripe I have against this film is the ending. It feels tacked on. I have a stronger policy against talking about spoilers, so I won't go into it. But the resolution happens at a breakneck pace. Kind of feels like a Scooby Doo episode wrapping up. It seems ironic considering the one Scooby Doo show that's being torn apart on the internet right now.
Calm down. Now get back to your seat. I'll take care of this. Calm down. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself.
Doctor, you're wanted on the phone. Everything's gonna be all right. Please.
Just a little bonus. I was considering doing a separate video on the remake. I gave it some thought, and the remake doesn't really do enough to merit its own video. All it really did was ramp up the sex and the gore. There's an entire section of this film that I cannot show because there's a woman walking around naked as a jaybird for 2 or 3 scenes. Plus, the big push for 3D effects in the film gets really obnoxious at times, consistently throwing things at the camera, and the dated effects that's using, it sticks out like a sore thumb. The good thing that it does do, however, is try to expand on the original film's ending. But where the original set out to compete with its peers, the remake aims right for the middle, feeling more like a cash grab than anything else. But if you're in the mood for a slasher that's out for your heart, give My Bloody Valentine a go. Please like, comment, subscribe, and have a good one.